Good afternoon. I think most people are back in the room, so we can get started. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever it is, if you're watching online. Thank you all for joining us here in Istanbul and online on this momentous occasion of FLA's 25th anniversary. I want to start by thanking Shelley and Kara and Stacy and Jamie, Burcu and the whole Turkey team, everyone on the FLA team who's made this such a great event. So some of you may recall that I'm coming up on my own FLA anniversary, my 1-year anniversary. And when I came to FLA last December, I was really inspired by the dedication and commitment of our team, our board, our more than 200 business, universities, civil society members to promoting and protecting human rights and supply chains worldwide. And since then, my appreciation has only grown as I've gotten a deeper understanding of both FLA's history as the champion of change and also the more recent innovations like our award-winning Living Wage Toolkit and the Harvesting the Future program that we heard so much about this morning that is changing the way we and the field approach child labor, responsible recruitment in the agriculture sector. It is a real honor and a real responsibility to be part of carrying that forward, which I don't take lightly, and I think everyone in this room doesn't take lightly. This is a transformational time. Our anniversary comes at a transformational time for human rights at work, and we're going to talk more about that shortly. But I think it's important to remember that a fair labor future is only possible because of everything that's been built over the last 2.5 decades by many of you here in the room. And with that in mind, I have the privilege of introducing a short retrospective video about the history of the FLA. You know, you can only get so much into 4.5 minutes, but I think it does a really good job of giving you a sense of all the essential voices that make up the FLA community, which is the beating heart of the impact we've had to date and will be what keeps us rooted going forward in practical collaboration and impact. Before we run the video, I just want to thank Kate Pereira, who put so much thought and work into pulling this video together and pulling all those voices into it. So thank you very much, Kate.
As has now been painfully well documented, some of the clothes and shoes we buy here in America are manufactured under working conditions which are deplorable and unacceptable.
The Apparel Industry Partnership was created in 1996 by the Clinton administration, and it really came in response to a couple of incidents where workers were being mistreated. We undertook over 6 months to develop a code of conduct for all companies in the apparel industry. We delivered our code of conduct to President Clinton. They then said to us, well, it's nice that you have this code, but how are we going to make it real? And so we spent the next 3 years really moving from aspiration and a set of principles to creating an organization.
It was in the late 1990s that I first attended an FLA meeting, and this was during the time of great change and challenge that forged the FLA. Faculty and students demanded to know where the products that bore the names and marks of universities were manufactured, and further demanded that codes of conduct be created and full public disclosure of those facilities of production were realized. And that was a complete new concept on campuses. It's really important for universities to be involved in the Fair Labor Association because it is such a wide array of those involved in putting products out into the marketplace.
We joined the Fair Labor Association in 2004, and we got our first accreditation in 2007. We really value our partnership with the Fair Labor Association. Not only that giving us credibility, but also having really the opportunity to work in collaboration with other brands, to also having a critical eye from the civil society organization that are part of the FLA.
We joined in 2007 to ensure our social compliance program was built on strong ethical foundation. Today, I can confidently say that our program's success is a direct result of that solid foundation and the partnership that we have built with the FLA and the members over the years. Everyone has a stake in it. And I would say the CSOs bring a fresh perspective on the workers' right, whilst the university have offered research-driven insights or even greater accountability and making the continuous improvement.
The investigations are absolutely critical. The existence of the third-party complaint process, the ability of really anyone to lodge a complaint and to fully expect thorough investigation, a credible investigation, an independent investigation is really so essential to universities such as UCLA, who really operate in the public trust.
¿Qué le diría a los trabajadores referente a la queja? Bueno, les diría que si sienten y consideran o constatan que están vulnerando sus derechos laborales, consulten, indaguen y realicen una queja de terceros, porque
este proceso ha permitido que hayan ciertos avances en las empresas donde tenemos representación sindical. Es por ello que hacemos un llamado a las organizaciones sindicales, a las personas trabajadoras de la maquila textil, para que conozcan del trabajo que desarrolla la FLA y que hagan uso de los instrumentos valiosos como la queja de terceros para garantizar derechos humanos laborales.
I think one of the interesting aspects of the Fair Labor Association is its ability to adapt and evolve.
During mid-2000s, several high-profile reports exposed child labor, forced labor, and environmental issues in the agriculture sector across various commodities and countries that set us on our journey to kickstart our agriculture program. It is unique from other certifications in that it offers independent third-party validation of the human rights due diligence program at the headquarters of the companies and at the farm level for specific commodities.
Being part of the FLA has actually set up us for success for the future. And of course, there's more work to do. Together, we can do more good.
Over the past 25 years, we've made great progress in putting fairness to work and improving the lives of millions of workers at farms and factories worldwide. Now it's time to look to the future of fair labor and where we want to be 25 years from now. I hope you'll join us in building a fair labor future.
Thanks again, Kate. And that's such a rich history to build on. We are going to turn now to the future of fair labor. What are the big challenges and what are the big opportunities for us going forward? I would say some things are clear. Facilitating, supporting successful implementation of mandatory due diligence will be an important part of our future and our very near future, to be clear. We also need to pay particular attention to climate risks that affect workers and helping create a just transition to a world of clean energy and climate mitigation and adaptation. And over time, artificial intelligence will dramatically change the way we do our work. Those things are clear. And our team has been already working toward building a future with that in mind. But I will be the first to say there's a lot we haven't figured out yet. And that's why a conversation like the one we're about to hear is so important. And I'm thrilled that we have great representation from the business community, from civil society, and a university student who most certainly represents the future. So I want to, and a remarkable moderator on top of that. So I'd like to invite our panel to come to the stage. So I will just introduce them as they're sitting down. So our moderator, Dr. Dorothy Baumann-Pauley, in the middle, is director of the Geneva Center for Business and Human Rights at the University of Geneva. She also serves as the research director at the NYU Stern Center for Business and Human Rights. In those roles, Doro works with companies to advance human rights in corporate practice, which is essential and core to what FLA does. I should also mention that she's an FLA alumna. She worked with us from 2004 to 2010, so it's all the more fitting that she should be here for our 25th anniversary. Sue Butterworth is the head of technical compliance and sustainability at Lucy and Yak. She has more than 30 years of experience in both supply and retail within the fashion industry and has contributed to the development of Lucy and Yak's responsible sourcing policy, as well as the brand's journey toward fair labor accreditation. Mackenzie Mock is a graduate student at the University of Michigan. She is also a sustainability consultant at Detroit-based garment manufacturer Industrial Sewing and Innovation Center, and previously interned with Nike, FLA, and Verite. She is a former member of FLA's student committee. Omer Aktay is the sustainability director at the Voicevale Group, where he works to create a positive impact while meeting the ever-changing needs of people, the market, and the environment. He's responsible for setting the sustainability agenda for Voicevale Group companies, as well as establishing and implementing their sustainability strategy. And last but not least, Gopinath is our founder and director of, is the founder and director of Cividep India. I said our because he's also on the FLA board. Cividep India is an organization based in Bangalore that safeguards labor rights in the apparel, electronics, leather goods, and plantation supply chains. He serves, as I said, on the board of both FLA and the Fairwear Foundation. Once again, thank you for joining us for our 25th anniversary celebration as we look toward building a fair labor future. Doro, to you.
Here we go once again. Thank you, Jeff, for introducing the panelists and me, and for inviting me to moderate this panel. As you said, I have some history with the FLA, and for a few years, almost 20 years ago, I worked with the then president and CEO to build capacity and worker voice in China with Laurette van Heerden, and I also trained social auditors in Eastern Europe. And the things that I learned then are still so valuable. So really an honor to be back. But today's panel is indeed not about looking backwards, but looking forwards. We will explore with these four excellent panelists the question, what does the fair labor future look like? And as a way of framing the conversation, let me just refer to three obvious, as you said, mega challenges for labor rights. And I'm happy that there's overlap with the things that you mentioned, Jeff. The first one was mentioned multiple times this morning already, and it dominates every conversation I have with a brand at the moment, with brands at the moment. So clearly this is regulation. And to this audience, there's no need to explain the acronyms of CSRD, CSDDD, but these legislations, as my colleagues, most of them legal scholars, would say, start a new era for human rights, because the soft law requirement of human rights due diligence is now a hard law obligation. But we are already seeing that companies need support to see the business potential of these new legal requirements beyond what some call the human rights bureaucracy or box ticking compliance. I believe the FLA is very well positioned to provide a framework and platform for meaningful stakeholder engagement. We touched upon that this morning as well. Standard-based human rights due diligence to make progress and impact measurable. And those measurable impacts for workers and communities, that should be the main focus. And the FLA has so much experience with the systemic challenges that require innovations. And I always perceive the FLA as the organization that creates innovations. You mentioned too the living wage tool and others. And I think this is key for being relevant in the future of regulation and supporting companies to move beyond mere compliance. So the second obvious challenge, and it's also a huge opportunity for the FLA, clearly is technology. Everybody's talking about AI. These tools raise a lot of hopes that we will facilitate risk identification by connecting the dots the right way. But I think we've already learned from past experiences with tech that tech alone is never the silver bullet. What it requires to train tech the right way is really deep issue expertise. And this is another strength that I see in the FLA. So also the FLA is one of the few organizations that actually has data dating back 25 years. And maybe now is the time to harvest that data in a way that helps us to forecast and address root causes of systemic human rights issues. And then indeed the last challenge, climate change and geopolitics. Both issues profoundly impact supply chain dynamics, and particularly in the last years, really created huge challenges for companies. The International Committee for the Red Cross counts over 50 violent conflicts in the world right now. The Economist reports year over year that democracies are in decline, which also creates a shrinking civic space, which in turn impacts the space in which labor rights advocacy can take place. So these are important developments where we've seen it in the previous panel. The collective voice is probably most important in contexts where governments are unable or unwilling to protect basic rights. And clearly climate change, we now know, has become a key driver for labor migration. We heard about the vulnerabilities of a migrant workforce, and it creates new challenges that we should include probably in a broader understanding of organizational safety, of organizational health and safety programs. For example, a warming planet creates probably chronic heat stress for workers in fields and factories, and we need to understand what should be the impacts for codes of conduct and good labor practices. And I believe the FLA can on this be a leader. The FLA has already provided leadership on these drastic supply chain shifts. They were one of the first organizations putting out a principled stance on sourcing from Xinjiang in China, for example, and speaking collectively up for a minimum wage in Bangladesh. So I think these instances will be increasingly important where this collective can really show its value. So I'm quite excited that the FLA is very well positioned to address these key challenges for labor rights in the future. And now I'm keen to hear from the panelists how they see these challenges. Let's do a first lightning round where I'll ask you the same question. From your perspective, what is the #1 challenge that workers will face in the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe I start with Sue on the left.
Hi. So as from a brand perspective, we've already identified this within our supply chain this summer. There's a number of things that can affect it, but for us, one would be climate change, especially with extreme weather conditions like heat waves. It's happen on a more frequent basis, so it's like we have to adjust how we work with our suppliers and how they're going to deliver orders. We've had to adjust times where the suppliers had to adjust their own working hours in which to effectively help the workers within their factories. So that the conditions are more like accommodating for them as well. So we've had to work with them on that. So it is something that we will have to look at implementing into our responsible sourcing policy and offer training to our buying team on how to manage that effectively. So.
Should we continue with you, Mackenzie?
Great, can everyone hear me? Wonderful. I think it's very telling that I also will cite climate change as the #1, impact that workers are facing. We heard that throughout the many panels this morning, folks talking about seasonal workers and migration, talking about heat stress, I'll cite the Higher Ground study that was published earlier this year, talking about indicators like extreme heat stress and flooding affecting countries like Cambodia, Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc. And these countries will really bear the brunt of this issue. So really the need for companies to think holistically about climate change, not only climate change mitigation from looking at renewable energy policies, but also the effects on people. So climate change adaptation. What does that look like for the many people involved in supply chains around the world? From that same study, it's estimated that 1 million workers' jobs will be lost because of climate change impacts. And this is in by 2030. So really that's within the next nearly 5 years. We don't have time to wait to address these issues. And by working together from the environmental point of view, along with the social point of view that we're all such leaders in this room, really that partnership is so critical to be able to support workers, their livelihoods, their education, as Ravi's question pointed to earlier, that full holistic support is needed for these livelihoods.
So large consensus on this side.
Yeah, thank you. So the question is, what is the number one challenge that workers will face in the next 5 to 10 years? So in my mind, it will be massive displacement. If we know it by the term migration, which is sort of a neutral term, but it is displacement of large number of workers looking for livelihood, looking for jobs. I mean, anywhere in India I go, the railway stations are full of workers internally migrate. When you pass through the Gulf countries, you can see workers sleeping on the floor of the airports. And within countries, people are moving long distances. So this will, it's already happening. It's not something that is already happening. And this is posing a lot of problems for all of us. Governments, of course, workers themselves, their families, the next generation, the children, and then local authorities, political parties, political formations. Yeah. I won't go into the reasons. The reasons are very obvious because business has changed. This is also in parallel with what we used to, we heard about globalization, liberalization, and privatization 25 years back, but we didn't know what it meant. But now we see what it meant, what it means, massive displacement of poorer sections of the elite have always migrated. Adventurers have migrated long distances, but looking at very common people, happy with their village life, and some livelihood there, moving long distances for livelihood. So we need to look at it from that perspective and the disruptions that cause, to themselves, to their families, and to the place where they are going. That's what we see when we go to the hazelnut farms. You see the local community doesn't have the carrying capacity of hosting this number of workers. That's only an example. So the entire system, is disrupting, and we don't have, at least till now, we don't have a collective approach to address these problems. And then it will take all of us and more to really make sure that they are safe, that they actually have a livelihood, they're able to make both ends meet, the children can go to school. The entire thing about what life means to us, a safe and secure and happy life. So that's very far for a large number of these workers, unfortunately. And it's also very heartening to see that, an organization like FLA, this is at the heart of it. Somebody talked about the beating heart, the beating heart is this, that we have the idealism to move towards that goal. And we have the practical means, the tools and the analysis and the ways to really go there. We aren't there, long distance. So maybe in 10 years, we might be closer to that, but that's a lot.
Thank you, Gopi. So climate change also leading to labor migration. Your one thing, please.
Yeah, sure.
Only one.
You can hear one thing. Okay. Then I'll just give some examples. For example, in Bolivia, people are waiting for the rain to harvest their hazelnuts. Right now, due to climate change issues, we have a new pest in hazelnut, and it's affecting 25% of the quality. And due to the and for this year, we see for all the commodities in Turkey, especially, we see labor shortage. So maybe I can also add one thing. What I want to see instead of challenge is that we are talking about regulations, acts, and all the other names. I want to see that the workers will get some benefit out of this acts, regulations, requirements, whatever, in the near future.
Thank you. Your last point is really intriguing to me. The CSRD and CSDDD is all the talk amongst brands, but in the field, no one has ever mentioned these legislations to me yet, or human rights due diligence, or the UN guiding principles for business human rights. So there's clearly a disconnect in the conversation, and probably the desired impacts of these regulations are not yet felt on the ground. All right. Let me now dive in some more detailed questions for each of you. So Mackenzie, I'm very happy you're here because you're truly representing the next generation, representing the students. And the FLA might not exist if it hadn't been for student activism at the time on US campuses in the 1990s. So what do you think? What role should student activists and universities play in building a fairer labor future going forward?
All right, are we on? Perfect. Well, thank you very much. It's an important question. And we heard from Liz in the opening video there that, student activism is also at the beating heart of FLA. And it really drives forward a robust and authentic university commitment to fair labor practices in licensing, and so many other ways. I'll say the way that student activists can get most involved in driving forward a fair labor future is to continue to ask questions. I previously did a lot of campaign work with Fashion Revolution, and questions were at the beating heart of that organization. And I think they're at the beating heart of every person in this room as well. The question of why and to whom are incredible drivers of getting people to pause and think about the impacts to people on different choices being made. The University of Michigan is no stranger to these questions and to students being curious about these in many different ways. In 2005, we had a very large campaign with different brands and licensing at the university. So really it brings into the spotlight that students can have a voice, bring that forward and make changes at a university level that bring advocacy and more eyeballs, as we'd say, to these really, really important causes. And it ignites a fire that we can all be passionate about in moments and opportunities to come.
Thank you. Quick follow-up question. Since the issues are ever evolving, how can fair labor advocates of the future prepare themselves? And what should I, as a professor, teach to them? What type of skills will they need to be effective advocates of the future?
Sure. From a skills perspective, we've heard a lot from folks about the importance of data. And I think to the earlier opening about technology, really data will drive a lot of decision-making going forward. But I would strongly caution to not rely 100% on data. That is, it's a very highly important quantitative point of view, but really understanding from workers that qualitative perspective, really elevating the worker voice platforms and bringing both of these efforts in together. So as a professor or as anyone supporting students or leaders kind of growing into these roles, I'd encourage you to encourage them that full holistic picture of both quantitative and qualitative skill sets moving forward to support the people who make our clothes, who produce our food, and so many other ways are involved in our daily life, and really getting them to take charge in that full holistic point of view.
Thank you so much. Let's now move on to the brand perspective. So you're representing the company Lucy and Yak. You're relatively new to the FLA. I learned you're in milestone 1 of the accreditation process. So how does your company aspire to make the world a better place with the help of the FLA, and what can the FLA do to help you achieve these aspirations?
So as you've mentioned, we're in our first year of our accreditation journey, coming towards the end of milestone 1. As the business enters its 7th year, the mission of the business still remains the same, and that's to promote a way of sourcing, producing and doing business in a positive manner that positively impacts both people and planet. So we understand the garment industry has many challenges. And we've utilised the SDG goals to help to prioritise where we can make a tangible difference. And one of these is no poverty, where we want to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So in the UK, Lucy and Yak are an accredited living wage employer. So this means that our staff are paid at least a real living wage. And it was really important to our CEO that he wanted us to be paying those living wages to the workers within our supply chain. It's not quite as simple as just doing that. So that's why we took the steps towards the accreditation journey with the FLA, because we want them to help us to do that. We want to make significant improvements to the wages of workers across the whole industry, but as it's a complex, the aspiration is complex. And it requires a lot of collaboration across the whole garment sector, which we've heard a lot today, people talking about collaboration. So we believe that the FLA accreditation process is going to help us strengthen our own internal systems, so that we're in a much better place then to start conversations with our supply base in order to manage this effectively. And we recognise that the FLA's wage data tool is a great resource for us to utilise as well at the end of that.
Right. Excellent. And also, you're not a huge company.
No.
So the consortium probably helps you in certain places to create leverage. Right?
Yeah. Like we only have I think there's about 220 employees. I thought it was 250 before, but it's actually just under 220. So for us, working with an accreditation towards an accreditation like the FLA is going to really help us, and it's given us leverage. And even being at a conference like this today, just talking to other businesses and how they've managed to overcome some of the hurdles as well within the accreditation process has been quite invaluable.
Okay, right. So your company committed to living wages, but you also committed to mapping your entire supply chain beyond tier 1, 2, 3, not sure, 4. But can you tell us sort of how has this been going so far? We heard in the morning there are challenges in tier 2, 3 companies, the large ones start relying on certification schemes, which are admittedly also not perfect.
Yeah.
But how are you dealing with these challenges? The deeper you go in the supply chain, the more complex it is.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. So Lucy and Yak got certified, we're GRS certified and OCS certified as well. So I know we're talking about scope certificates and how that's helped people map down through the supply chain, but that's what we have basically used to do that. We know it's not foolproof, it's not perfect, but we believe that getting that visibility down through to tiers 2 and 3, also working with our direct suppliers in tier 1 as well to get that information. It's been quite a manual process. So what we're looking forward to doing is working with a third party, because obviously with the digital product passports upcoming, that's going to require lots of information on transparency within supply base. We believe that the AI that they can offer can really help us to get further down into that supply chain as well.
That's exciting to hear of the use of a tech tool already to improve traceability.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me turn over to Omer. Omer, voice veil is a global trader of many commodities and a necessary link between producers and food manufacturers, the brands. So how do you see the role of traders changing in the future, given the increasing interest in traceability and due diligence in supply chain? I think traders, from my perspective, have been the overlooked actor in global supply chain analysis from an academic point of view. So very happy to have you speak on the role of trader.
Sure. Yeah. When we think about the role of the traders, I think it's going to be more and more important, because we feel like a bridge between the suppliers and the brands and retailers. So we need to be able to understand the reality of the field of the upstream supply chain, and also we need to meet the ever-changing needs of our clients.
Right.
So, in order to comply with the new legislations and ensure traceability, like we are working closely with our upstream supply chain and with our suppliers actually. Like we have established our own code of conduct, and our code of conduct is aligned with FAA requirements. But we know that establishing a code of conduct will not be enough, so we support them with trainings and trying to understand, like as we mentioned, we are working with various different products, but we also had a risk assessment, and we try to focus on the products that we are going to prioritize. So we are with our strategic suppliers. We are trying to understand the reality of the field and also the needs of the markets. So we believe that the importance of traders, the role of traders will increase in the new legislation.
That's really interesting to share responsibility and bridge between buyers and producers. And one of the commodities you deal with are Brazil nuts, and they have a unique upstream supply chain because the community members work in forests, not on a defined piece of land or a farm. What role should the FLA play in supporting Voice Veil as you influence work with community members?
My favorite question. Okay.
let
me tell you why Brazil nuts are like it's obvious. It's an informal sector. Like 70% of Brazil nuts is produced in the border of Bolivia. Right. Why I said border in Bolivia? There aren't any farm or farmers or not really workers. Yeah. So they are harvested in that of Amazon forest. So this product is pretty unique. It's a wild crop, and when you think about the context of the country, we are working in Bolivia, one of the poorest countries in Latin America, and even informality in the other sectors very high and common. So we know that like we've been trading Brazil nuts for over 25 years, and we know the dynamics of the supply chains. We know the market, and we know our suppliers. But that's not enough. Like, and we also know that there are a lot of projects, a lot of certification schemes are also going around in the Brazil nut supply chain. But for us to assess and address the risks that we have identified in our baseline studies and baseline assessments, we believe that certification will not be the right answer. So we decided to partner with FLA, and we become an affiliate member of FLA Cultural Program in 2021. Back then, how FLA can support us is that actually, like when we start, we were completely open, like and transparent. We share what we have, like the baseline studies, the supplier visits, the reports of our findings, and so on. And we worked a lot actually. How can we comply with the principles in the FLA cultural program? So actually, to have a common understanding, last August we conducted baseline assessments with FLA to understand the risks and how can these principles implemented follow in the Brazil nuts supply chain. And like we have identified several risks, but we also need to go into the prioritization. So we have the health and safety, minimum wage, and forced. Sorry, there are too many risks, so I have to check. Health and safety, minimum wage, and forced labor. So these are the top three that we are focusing on, and we are working with our strategic suppliers according to our implementation plan. And we are hoping to have our first verification visit this December.
Right. And if you're projecting into the future, if those harvesting communities would adopt responsible practices, how would that look like? How could they benefit concretely?
Yeah, actually, like to be open, like to be honest, these principles first needs to be complied by the suppliers. We can call them our tier 1 suppliers, the ones who are processing and exporting Brazil nuts. They have to establish an internal management system. They have to monitor what's going on in their upstream supply chain, and they need to adapt policies and they need to adapt policies and procedures and monitor the supply chain. I think with that we will be able to come up with some impact on field level, like jungle level, let's say. So yeah.
You're also integrating feedback from all stakeholders. Yeah. That's another unique feature you told me about. So can you like explain to us how you're integrating that feedback that you're collecting in sort of future planning?
Yeah. Maybe I can give an example about that, like how it works, how the feedback works. I mean, like we are trying to use different channels to collect feedback, but when you think about the Brazil nut context in Bolivia, you cannot wait for email from a harvester to assess, like to address the feedback or let's say reviews, let's say. So what we do is like we have a team in Bolivia who is responsible for monitoring the upstream supply chain with our strategic suppliers. So there we conduct harvester trainings, and we actually mapped our stakeholders, and we identified the top stakeholders which will have impact in our programs, and we are continuously in touch with them. We are informing the next steps we are going to take, and so. And even like when we are, for example, when our field implementation team organizing a training, we are also sharing that as well. So just maybe a short example. This feedback is like how we build our sustainability strategy and sustainability approach. This is not like we have the sustainability strategy and we are going to implement it. It doesn't work out that way. You need to adapt it according to what you hear from your stakeholders. Yeah. And for example, we had the chance to visit the Brazil nut suppliers in jungle level, and we see that for example the drinking water is a problem. So we work with our suppliers. We analyzed that water. And we saw that the mercury level in the drinking water they use is very high due to the gold mining in the rivers and so on. So I mean it's not possible to drink that water. So like to know this, like we have to hear that there's a problem with the water. And once we have these results, we share it with all our stakeholders, even those stakeholders that you think you are not, that there are not stakeholders, but there are, such as gold miners. Right. So right now we are implementing a project to establish water drills for harvesters in the jungle where they can have clean water.
Thank you. That's very interesting. You highlighted the importance of identifying the right stakeholders and being in touch with them continuously. I've been invited to many brand organized large sustainability dialogues once a year, and I always wonder, do the brands actually get what they need from these big events? Or would it not be better to stay in touch with key stakeholders throughout the year? But it's not either or. Thank you so much, Omar. Govi, over to you. Worker well-being is at the center of FLA's mission. And what changes would CIVIDEP, your organization, like to see companies implement to better address the rising informality in their supply chains so that they're ensuring fair practices for informal, home-based, and migrant workers? Your area of expertise.
It's a long question. I don't know. I mean, see, there are a number of things being done. There are projects and yeah, there are various attempts, you know. I remember a project some 20 years back, which taught workers to cook hygienic food, nutritious food. I mean, they know how to cook, you know, all that they want is more money to buy more better vegetables and cereals, you know. So from there, there are various projects and schemes that you're talking about brands and companies and their efforts. Yeah. So, I mean, they are there. So, I mean, see, the key is, as we have heard earlier, is stakeholder engagement. You know, without that, you know, you don't know your worker. You know, if you look at many of these industries, do the companies know their workers? Even the suppliers don't know their workers. You know, sometimes the turnover rate is so high, you know, that you don't understand the profile of the workers. I mean, in our Bangalore apparel factories, if you go there once, you meet some workers, and you go there 2 years later, almost all the workers are gone. It's a new workforce. So what do you do with them? You see. So I mean, yeah, you need to know the work. There is not enough data. I mean, even our government, you know, labor department doesn't have solid data. What data they have is what has been declared by the manufacturers when they started their factory.
Yeah. But Gopi, in the factory context, these are still formal workers. They often have a contract, but I'm particularly interested in learning how the FLA could support you in bridging to the ever-growing informal workforce. Informal workers that are indispensable for so many supply chains.
This idea that factory workers are formal workers, I would challenge that.
Okay.
Really. Because, you know, I mean, how can you be very formal, you know, when you don't don't have continued job security?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, most of the workers don't know what is written on a piece of paper. 90% of the workers don't get even a piece of paper. You see, even now. So, so what is about formality? So I think, you know, they're all in the same basket. You know, a large number of workers in the fashion industry are as vulnerable as in supply chains. You know, home workers. We have also worked with home workers. So I mean, it's not the same. You know, there are very distinct differences between farm workers and factory workers and home-based workers, and there are differences. So I won't be able to tell you what exactly to be done, you know, because I will only stress on the necessity for stakeholder engagement, you know, to know your workers. I mean, somebody was talking about earlier panel about profiling their workers. You know, one of the companies said that the first what they did was to profile their workers in the sense, you know, what is the age group, whether it's male or female, where do they come from, what do they earn, you know, so that kind of information, granular information about your workers is required, you know. Yeah.
There's no clear demarcation line between the formal and the informal worker in so many countries.
Yeah, see now, we look at, I mean, my country, India, you know, you think that it's a middle income country and, you know, things are getting better. 90% of the entire workers do not have any kind of social security. I don't have a pension, see. So yeah, really, I mean, honestly, you know, my organization will give me a gratuity. I mean, if it has enough money, once, you know, but 90% of the workforce do not have any kind of social security in a country like India. And look at the least developed countries, you see.
So Gopi, what could brands do to better engage with civil society organizations and proactively address some of those issues in a way that is truly worker-centered?
Yeah. See, brands shouldn't be looking for escape routes, you know. See, one big escape route is to say that the workers are not organized and they don't have representatives. I mean, that is an older route, you know. So see, in a country like India, you have big trade unions. And I remember in the morning somebody said that, okay, you also, I mean, organizers, campaigners also have your work cut out. Why don't you go and organize? Okay. I mean, we do that. Yeah, we do that. Some of us, Nazma, and all of us have been doing organizing work because it's not easy to do that. See, if the factory owners and farm owners also have one golden principle, it is that don't allow collectivization. So if you survey the entire industry, how many trade unions are there? How many collective bargaining agreements are there? So you see the fundamental right of the worker, the most enabling right of the worker, which is freedom of association, is not respected. So how do you engage with all these informal workers, and maybe do companies want that? I don't know. I mean, do companies want the workers to be distributed into various non-representational groups like families? How can a family represent their interest? So without respecting the freedom of association, I mean, the level of engagement with stakeholders will be very minimal, very primitive, and it will not give you anything.
So what could the FLA do to create a platform for exchange between civil society organizations such as yours and brands? Since brands do have a legal obligation now to engage with meaningfully with stakeholders. So what would make that exchange truly meaningful?
Yeah, see now, FLA, see now, there is a problem. The problem is that, I mean, what do you expect FLA to do? Yeah, I mean, magic, like, yeah. See now, see, I would not ask my colleagues in FLA to defend themselves, because the impact has to come from the other stakeholders. The biggest impact has to come from the brands, the suppliers. The impact has to come from there. The impact cannot come from FLA. FLA, I mean, in my opinion, in my understanding, I've been there for 10 years. So in my understanding, I mean, there's a lot of hard work going on. There is analysis, there is understanding. But FLA can, at best, facilitate a dialogue, a meaningful dialogue between stakeholders. It can't guarantee impact. No, nobody must ask FLA to show impact. The impact has to be shown by the stakeholders.
Yeah, but the FLA
FLA can develop tools, can have standards, can hold on to standards, can rub it into people who don't agree with those standards. You can do all those things. If you want to be a member, you need to do this, and that's what is happening. So it can do everything, but not impact. I wouldn't demand impact from FLA.
Okay.
I mean, see, yeah. So you could. I mean, FLA can measure it. Like, have standards is what it is. You can say, okay, we want this kind of an output and an outcome, from you. The more powerful.
The active contributors need to be.
Exactly.
Brands. Understood. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's do another round with the same question to all of you, really looking into the future. So when it comes to building a fair labor future, if you had one wish for the FLA over the next 10 years, what would it be? You started out asking, what's the one challenge that you see? So now one wish to the FLA here's in the front row, so they will be taking notes. Should we start with you again, Sue?
So I changed my answer to this yesterday after visiting the factory. It was really inspiring to see how that factory had given women workers a big opportunity with such a great, huge kindergarten in which for the children to stay while the mothers work. So I think one that's important to me as well as the brand is like looking at what opportunities there would be for brands in helping us to help our suppliers in upskilling women workers within the supply chain, and how we can guide our suppliers to get them effectively to increase women workers, and not just at unskilled level perhaps, but more like in managing positions as well, because I think that would help give women workers more trust in higher, in managers at a higher level. Yeah.
Thank you. Great. I'm sure you've seen the agenda. So this afternoon, they're
really excited about that.
Standard perspective to global supply chain. So they're already on top of this. So excellent. Thank you. Your one wish from the FLA.
Wonderful. My answer is actually changed as well. I think from my perspective, having been involved in the FLA in so many different ways, from a student committee membership to an internship with you all, and I know that FLA is very involved at the University of Michigan as well. That's a huge privilege from my point of view. I have wonderful ways with which to interact with my passion area and my interest area that I'll be launching into come graduation in December. But I would really encourage the FLA to broaden its scope with the student committee and welcome universities and colleges and other forms of education throughout the world, noting that there is a lot of US-centric involvement in the program, but to really bring more diversity of folks learning from the key leaders at FLA. I really enjoyed that opportunity and recognize how privileged I am to have received that. And so making sure that there's a diversity of folks involved as the next leaders in the fair labor future will be critical for the future.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I love this because indeed, the US, like the university engagement of the FLA is very US centric, and the students that I teach, we have a different campus culture, but they're ones that take my class, they're also very passionate and would probably enjoy such opportunities to become more involved. Cookie. Repeat one wish to the FLA for the next 10 years. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, FLA has to keep on doing what it does best, which is promote dialogue, respectful dialogue, recognizing each player's strengths, capacities, and continue to do that, which is not there, I mean, look at everywhere. Somebody was talking about geopolitics, 50 conflicts, I mean, can we afford that? So I mean, and yeah, see, I have 25, 30 years in this field. We have shouted at each other with companies, against companies. And they have started listening, last few years. So I think that's where the secret is, that we get companies who have tremendous power and responsibility to listen to people like us, civil society, trade unions, students, and the workers themselves. So get them to listen, and that's what's being done. You see, I mean, that's why I like FLA. with all limitations and all challenges and everything, is that there is a place to dialogue. So keep doing that. And then maybe also it's not just maybe, it has to provide tools and mechanisms to have meaningful dialogue. And what is meaningful dialogue? And a meaningful dialogue is a dialogue which will have a impactful outcome. Yeah.
So now you're back to impact.
Yeah, impactful outcome. Yeah, but it's not FLA's responsibilities where I'm changing. I'm different. FLA has to be evaluated by its success in promoting dialogue, but not what happens to workers and other stakeholders. No, I'm clear about that.
Okay. Irmer, your wish for the FLA.
Yeah, I mean, my first wish would be like they keep on being dismotivated and keep on asking why and try to understand and adapt themselves. And the second thing, like we were talking about 5 to 10 years, so I would wish to use AI in the favor of the workers. Like, I mean, like, I don't know, like establish a system in a factory, really, like recognize the voice of the supervisor. If he or she shouts, then you can find out what's going on, things like that. Yeah, like things like that. Like especially when like I mean, when you think about in general, use AI with the risk assessment, with the data collection, and keep on pushing us. Keep on pushing the entire sectors to move forward.
Right, excellent. So I'm not a panelist, but I would also like to present one wish to the FLA, and I want to echo Gopi. After coming, it's been over a decade that I've been to an FLA meeting, but coming back, it just shows me the room is full. it remains a trusted community, and that is the foundation, the trust to innovate and create the impacts that we're all looking for. So pulled together, I think this is the key for future success of the FLA. With that, I think we can wrap up today's panel. I thank you all. Thank you.